Hey guys, welcome back to another Q&A. It is March 28th, 2019. This week was, I think it was an open topic, if I remember correctly. Maybe. Yep. Okay. Cool. So I have questions on Facebook and Instagram as usual, and I will go ahead and jump into them. All right, so first one is Clen really dangerous for the heart and can cause cardiac hypertrophy? Some guys like Dave Palumbo say it's safe for the heart and the best fat burner out there. Best fat burner out there is definitely debatable, but okay, so I've seen some research on this, and it was in rats. There was some potential for cardiac hypertrophy and cell death. But from what I understand, and I don't know that there's any matching human research on this, I'm pretty sure there's not. So there's that. We don't have that. But from what I understand, the rats have a different beta receptor that we don't have, and that's why the damage, that's potentially why the damage occurs to them and probably not to us. So take that for what it's worth. You know, it's obviously, it's used in humans and for asthma, dosing, you know, I mean, obviously the dosing's different. You know, dosing between an asthmatic versus somebody using for fat loss may be different, but yeah, that's, from what I understand, that's why the issues don't really translate over into humans. So, you know, there you go. But yeah, as far as I know, I don't think there's any matching human research that shows that either. So next one, breathing techniques that would be applicable to motocross. Okay, been struggling with breathing correctly while racing, and it's affecting my endurance greatly. Well, I mean, you could really look at that any kind of performance sport, especially controlling your breathing for one, breathing correctly, you know, nasal breathing, belly breathing, breathing with, you know, through diaphragm. So, I mean, learning how to do that is important. I find like a lot of people that struggle with the breathing too, they may have, you know, like sinus congestion and issues like that, to where that's directly interrupting their, you know, interrupting their breathing patterns. But beyond that, yeah, just being able to fully expand and contract your diaphragm or your stomach, and learning how to breathe through your belly and not just through your chest. Most people are able to get a fuller breath that way and breathe more controlled that way. Also, training at, I don't want to say like training at altitude, like doing something like that will help oxygenate the blood more potentially, and you know, your breathing capacity will get better, your endurance should get better. But the main thing is just breathing through the belly and learning how to do that soft belly breathing, even though it's not necessarily directly intended to work in this way. It definitely works in this way if you can practice that. So that's a super simple way to do it. That's what I would normally suggest for most people to get used to those full inhales and full exhales, and then just being conscious of it. So I mean, like this individual, while they're in the middle of a race, I mean, during practice, I mean, you're going to have to be aware of it and work on it. Then a lot of the time it's people holding their breath, you know, they're just not breathing because of anxiety, because of adrenaline, you know, different adrenal hormones and stuff being dumped, and people just holding their breath, and that's heightening the negative impact that they're getting. So being cognizant of it is also a big part. And the next one is, what is the connection between cortisol, blood sugar levels, and blood pressure? Could high cortisol levels cause BG and BP to be elevated? Yes, absolutely. So it's whether it's not indirect or direct. I mean, when you release cortisol, blood pressure typically goes up, blood, vessels contract. But I mean, the main reasons really is going to be because, we'll talk about blood glucose first, just to decipher between the two. With blood glucose, you will have like an adrenal dump. You're going to dump cortisol, and that will cause hepatic glucose release. So, I mean, you're going to release glucose into the blood, and that's just because it's your body's getting ready for a stressful situation. So whatever it is, it's training, or you are something happens bad that stresses you out. I mean, anything is going to absolutely release blood glucose, but that's temporary. I mean, that's an acute situation. Now, if you do it chronically, like if someone's chronically stressed, for example, yeah, they could for sure have higher blood glucose. I see it all the time. I mean, I'll see it. I've even seen pretty drastic cases where people's blood glucose is elevated, 20, 30 points above what it should be. And that's not because their pancreas isn't producing enough insulin, or they're necessarily insulin resistant. They might be somewhat, but it's more so because they're just constantly dumping glucose because they're so stressed. So, yeah, that's, and obviously in that situation, you're also going to have high cortisol. So, you have the correlation there. And then blood pressure too, just a note on that, hyper cortisol levels will actually impact aldosterone too, so it will impact your water balance. Typically people with under production of cortisol, so like adrenal dysfunction or adrenal insufficiency, they'll have low blood pressure and electrolyte imbalance, and will have their aldosterone's affected, obviously, but just in the opposite way. So you'll have that you're also going to have it with high cortisol. You'll have high blood pressure. I mean, people that are stressed obviously have high blood pressure, and then you have water retention as well. So if your kidneys aren't, if your kidneys aren't able to get rid of all the water, then you're also going to have high blood pressure. So I mean, I guess my point is that there's a lot of direct and indirect little things going on there, that it's really just caused by stress. I mean, because you're not going to have high cortisol without high stress. Whether it's good stress or bad stress, you won't have a large cortisol release without some kind of stressor. So that's kind of my point. Next one, have you heard of DIM crashing estrogen? I've seen it drop mine as low as 13 on my labs, and something similar happened to a friend. From what I know, it is supposed to just balance out estrogen, bringing low estrogen up and high estrogen down. I wasn't taking anything else at the time for an AI. Also, what do you think about a female using DIM that is taking OTC test boosters to keep estrogen from spiking too high? No, I actually haven't seen it crash estrogen. So you say balance estrogen? Yeah. And what that means essentially is we're looking at the three primary estrogens, E1, 2, and 3, and the metabolites. So I'll give you an example. If you were to look at, I talk about the Dutch test sometimes, which is dried urine test. In that, you can see estrogenic metabolites that are excreted through the urine. If you were to take DIM, it may change that metabolite profile that you would see. So you are seeing a change in the ratios, but I've not actually seen anyone significantly lower their estrogen. Especially, I mean, I've seen it go down some, and that's just more so people that are high to begin with, but never really in anyone that has normal estrogen and just wants to maintain that balance. But I mean, if it's happening to you, it could be one of two things. You may just be more sensitive to it than somebody else, or there might be something else in the product that it's spiked with to actually lower your estrogen to make it a little more dramatic and make more people buy it. So I don't know what product you're using, but I wouldn't use it. Maybe try a different product, and if it still doesn't work, just don't use it. And as far as the female taking it, yeah, I mean, females can take it. And the thing about females that's a little bit different than males is males get most of their estrogen through aromatization, why we have a lot lower estrogen. You know, testosterone aromatizes at a certain rate to estrogen, whereas females, you know, they're directly producing a lot of their own estrogen, hence why it's super high, because, well, it's a lot higher than males. I mean, because if a female just simply got all of their estrogen through aromatization of testosterone, they would have very low estrogen because they have low testosterone to begin with. So I guess why I'm saying that is it really probably isn't necessary to do anything like any kind of take anything to combat estrogen from a testosterone booster, because it's just not gonna, I can't see anything over the counter boosting it to a significant enough degree that they're gonna have like high aromatization. So but they can take it, they can absolutely take it, but I just don't think that it's in that actual scenario. I don't think that the DIM is necessary to combat high estrogen from a test booster, is my point. So yep, because yeah, again, they just, the production's, it's a little bit different than male. So going over to Instagram, getting, oh, that's the wrong one. Oh, okay. Do you incorporate any direct ab work and or vacuums in your training or with clients? What are your favorite ab waist exercises? Yeah, I do, for a couple reasons. I mean, ab control on stage, people that are competing, a good way to, you know, be able to control your abs better is just train them some, at least, to have that, a good neural connection there and be able to pose them. Whether that directly builds them or not, there's that whole debate, you know, does ab training actually build your abs very well? Yeah, I think it does to an extent if you train them frequently enough, at least with some load. I've seen people's abs improve. So yeah, is it from them deadlifting and squatting? Could be, but vacuums, yeah, sure. I mean, you're at that point too, you're talking about a lot of transverse abdominis. So, I mean, that's more like ab control, controlling your breathing. Those are really good for that purpose. If someone has a hard time controlling their stomach during like transitions from pose to pose, or just in general, even just standing there, they have a hard time. That's assuming there's not like any other digestive issue or something going on that's blowing out their stomach. But if they just have a problem controlling it, yeah, the ab vacuums are great. I have a lot of people that I have do them, especially people that have, or maybe people that generally have a little bit bigger abdominal area to begin with. We'll try to pull it down a little bit with those. Yeah, it does help, because people, here's the thing too, is that as you do those more and you get more cognizant of of your abdominal control, like you tend to get better at it during the day as well. Like I know that I don't want to sit here and just like let my gut hang out. Not that I'm thinking about it all the time, but unconsciously, like I'm keeping my stomach at least in a somewhat tight position. I mean, I'm not sitting here crunching down on it, but I'm not just letting it hang out. So that's another thing. But favorite exercises, so yeah, you mentioned the vacuums. You can also do things like a pelvic tilt, like laying on your back on the floor and vacuum that way. That's a really good way to do it. And direct, I really like using, and a lot of people, especially ones that need like more core strength, we can do weighted stuff, but I like using the foam roller a lot. Foam roller on your low back, you know, like right above your hips. You can actually get a slight hyperextension on the way back and then all the way up. You really don't have to do those weighted. They get really hard. You can do them with some weight, but you don't necessarily have to. Those are really good. Anything weighted is fine. I mean, you can use like the Roman chair or the decline bench and do sit-ups and things weighted like that. But yeah, I mean, any of that stuff's honestly is fine. I think it's just really comes down to what people feel the best, and being able to go through a good range of motion and contract without just using their hip flexors, you know, when they're just like thrusting a sit-up. So keep that in mind. A lot of people, they'll wear their hip flexors out and they don't really contract their abs very well. So getting yourself or clients to trust the process and push past comfort zones when it comes to increasing calories and carbs, especially when goal is to put on lean muscle mass and strength, recover, of course. Okay, so again, another one of these things I kind of sound like a broken record on, I've talked about it so many times, is that it really, really just boils down to trying to detach them from that emotional connection and helping them think logically. And I'll say that. I mean, I'll straight up say, you're thinking out of emotion here. You're not thinking logically, because logically, we need to do this, 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 and this to get, to increase your chances of getting to your goal, or, get you to your goal, or however you want to pitch it. And just tell them straight up, like, you have an emotional attachment with this situation. It scares you. You're afraid to do it, but in order to get to where you want to be, you need to go through these steps and do these things. And yeah, I mean, if you lay it out right there in front of them, it's really hard for people to just deny it over and over again. They will. You'll get people that will. You'll get people that will shrug it off. You'll get people that'll twist it, don't want to admit it, that there's even an issue. Whether there's somebody that like chronically undereats or over exercises, or whatever it is, and they're someone that's been afraid to put on weight for forever, so they've never progressed. You'll get that. But if you keep just drilling the logic angle over and over, I mean, they're eventually just they're probably gonna give in eventually. I mean, I've gone through it with plenty of people. That's normally how I go through it. I'll lay it out real easy for them. Like, hey, this is really easy to understand. This is what we need to do. And if you want to continue to have this emotional attachment with it, then, you will not get to where you want to be. Just say it like that, right out in front. So, and then of course, you can do other little things to kind of, try to ease the tension and ease them into it. If it's like, compromise is being maybe just increase calories a little bit slower than you would want to, even though you as a coach might want to increase them at a certain rate. They just aren't comfortable with that, and you're like, okay, well, hey, I'm willing to go a little bit slower. I just want to let you know it's not going to be optimal, but I'll do it if it makes you feel better, because we can still work towards your goal that way. Just let them know, be honest with them in that way and do that. That's fine if you have to compromise. I mean, you get the reverse dieting or post-show or post-fat loss period. That's super common. Like you want to increase at a certain rate, and that they need to, but psychologically, that's just not going to work for them. And I'll compromise. I'll like, hey, you're going to recover slower. We're going to spin our wheels here a little bit. But if this helps you adhere and feel better and not lose your mind, not binge eat or whatever, we'll go slow. I'm cool with that, because I mean, what's ideal on paper just doesn't always pan out in practical application. So I mean, be willing to compromise, meet in the middle there if you need to. All right, so last one is tips and tricks on reducing the bloat from insulin. Currently taking 8 to 10 IU's pre and post workout, pre and post with GH. Well, it shouldn't really bloat you that much. Yeah, the GH is known to cause some water retention, and definitely in like a dose dependent manner. The more you take, the more it usually causes. Insulin, yeah, it does normally. I notice it does have people hold some intracellular water. Some people will get a little bit watery subcutaneously, but I mean, bloat is a different, like when I hear the word bloat, I think of like stomach bloat. If you're having, what I normally notice with this is that they start taking insulin, so they immediately think that they need to eat a bunch more food, and they put themselves in this giant caloric surplus that they don't need, just because they think that now that they're taking insulin, that's what they need to do. No, I mean, metabolically, your metabolism didn't just magically speed way up and now you have to out eat it. I mean, your range of a caloric surplus is going to be pretty damn close to the same. So, I mean, the insulin part's not really going to matter. It's not really going to impact it all that much. So, when I hear bloat, it's just an issue of people trying to cram down too many carbs just because they're taking insulin when really they don't need to be doing that. So, I mean, if your digestion's good, then you're not going to be bloating just because you take it. You shouldn't. It should not. That shouldn't be happening. Now, as far as the water retention goes, make sure your blood pressure is good. It can potentially cause a little bit of water. But I mean, outside of that, I mean, your kidneys are functioning good and your blood pressure isn't out of control. A little bit of water's fine. I mean, it just gives the joints a little more cushion, gives you a little bit more leverage in the gym, makes you stronger. It's nothing to fear, nothing to worry about. In moderation, it's probably just going to help. So, yep, that's it, guys. That is it for this week. Thanks for all the questions, and I'll talk to you guys next week.